Well, welcome to WITS 2023. We made it. I'm Kristen Facalata, and I am the president of the Dayton-Wright AFCEA chapter, your local AFCEA chapter here, right in Dayton. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the beautiful new Wright Innovative Technology Summit, or WITS, venue here at the Dayton Arcade. This is a true jewel in the Gem City, which is what we like to call Dayton. It's a most appropriate venue for one of the big topics that you're going to be hearing a lot about over the next 2 days: transformation. The Dayton Arcade, where you're sitting right now, was built between the years of 1902 and actually opened in 1904, and it has a rich history. The Rotunda area where we're sitting right here today served as a marketplace with many vendors selling various goods and necessities coming together to serve the Dayton community. In the 1980s, the arcade actually transformed into a shopping mall, and there was a food court area right where we're sitting now. And over the last few years, this building has been undergoing a transformation, just as much of our great city of Dayton has. We've been building lots of places and spaces downtown where people can come together once again, gathering together. It's not really a new concept, right? But in a time when technology has made it so that we can work from anywhere, at any time, sometimes working at home alone, it really makes gathering together like this sort of a revelation these days. So it makes sense that right now, when our phones and other technology and our always-on culture that kind of can leave us feeling physically disconnected from each other, that these old gathering spaces like this would get their time to shine once again in the Gem City, because it means so much more when we're actually able to be all here together in person, shaking hands, looking at each other eye to eye, and just spending that time together and those in-between conversations. Because honestly, we probably could have done this whole conference on Teams or Zoom. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we actually did that for WITS. We did 2 full days virtually. So, no, there's something really special about making the choice to get people together in person, looking face to face, and having real conversations. And so doing that in such a special and unique space like the Dayton Arcade, it just makes sense. And these days, maybe it's even innovative to do that. So welcome to our city. It's great in Dayton. Even if you live here, let me welcome you to downtown, because there's a whole lot going on. And depending on what part of town you may live in, you may have missed some of the things over the last couple of years that have been going on downtown. There are some special and unique gathering spaces that have been transformed down here. Whether you're at WBI's 444 attending one of Jim Mason-Brink's great colliders that he puts on, or catching some of a Dayton Dragons game over at the Moeller Brew Barn patio where you can look right into the stadium, where we also just had an Emerging Leaders event just a couple of weeks ago at that venue. Or, like last night, meeting at the Century Bar and trying a bourbon that you've never heard of before you showed up at the Century Bar. There's so many great spaces and places for us to gather and come together. And I'm hoping this venue really is an enlightening place for everybody and inspiring for everybody here in Dayton, because there's just so many gems in the Gem City. The arcade, it's part of waking up what we say the sleeping giant that is Dayton. After it was shuttered for many years, the arcade is becoming a place for people to gather once again. You may have attended the Fast Rope event for coffee right behind me at the new Ghost Light coffee location. So there's just wonderful places for people to come together. And we're honoring the history of this space, but transforming it for our time. So just like our Air Force, they're celebrating 76 years this year. And the Wright AFA chapter just held their annual ball at the National Museum of the Air Force, which is right around the corner. So honoring our legacy and accomplishments of our past generations while equipping our airmen to be prepared for today's fight. That's what we mean by innovative technology, new ideas, fresh thinking, which only happens by bringing people together, great minds together, sparking innovative thoughts that we can then turn into action. With this summit, our hope is that we contribute to furthering a digital transformation initiative and spark some ideas while you're here for further conversations that we can use to support the Air Force mission. Our hope is that you really walk away inspired with some new ideas, how you can better serve your clients, partners, and ultimately the warfighter. So we're here to talk about innovative technology, digital transformation, and what we can do to help our Air Force move to true enterprise digital domain dominance. Over the next 2 days, you're going to be hearing from leaders in government, industry, and academia who are doing this work and leading the charge to transform our digital enterprise. And we'll hear from our partners with the Air Force Digital Transformation Office about what they mean when they say digital transformation. I hope you're all as excited as I am for this packed agenda. First, some housekeeping items while we're getting started. The restrooms are located in the back of the space on either side of this wall that you see behind you. And we will be coming around as we have keynote speakers, panelists, and folks coming up all day. If we do like interaction here at AFCEA. So if you have some questions while you're listening, think of those, and then we will have a mic that we'll be taking around to ask your questions. So please don't be shy. We do encourage lots of participation here at AFCEA. And also, we will have coffee throughout. If you grabbed your program, you should have the full agenda in there. Pay attention to that for when we'll have networking breaks. We will have a plated lunch in here today. And we have a full array of vendor tables on the side that we can visit during our networking breaks. Also, if you parked in the parking garage, you will be able to exit. And there's no need to pay even though if you've got a ticket. I just wanted to make sure we all knew that for today. And so you'll be able to exit if you parked in the Rybold parking garage. And then tonight, and we'll talk more about this, but tonight our emerging leaders are hosting a social that is going to be downstairs from this venue in a place called The Tank. So you should have a couple of tickets in your name tag. And that's for drink tickets tonight to join us for the social. So we'd really love for everybody to join us there after the events today. So last things. So our Dayton-Wright chapter of AFCEA is a membership organization, and our mission is to serve the Dayton defense community by bringing together government, industry, and academia to foster dialogue and networking. We put on many events throughout the year. We have a busy local chapter of AFCEA. But your Dayton-Wright chapter of AFCEA is a part of a larger international organization, AFCEA International. And we have over 130 chapters located throughout the world. Doing the same kind of great work that we're doing here in Dayton. You've got a local AFCEA chapter located wherever you may be just about in the world. And we are so fortunate today to actually have our VP of Membership, who is from AFCEA International, Miss Tina Jordan, is here with us today, and she's going to talk to us a little bit more about the AFCEA International perspective and talk to us about that bigger organization that we're all a part of if you are a member of AFCEA. So, Tina.
Thank you, Kristen. So as Kristen Am I on? Okay. As Kristen just mentioned, I'm Tina Jordan. I'm the Vice President of Membership for FCA International, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to join you at the FCA Dayton-Wright Innovative Technology Summit today. I bring with you greetings and support from Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, CEO and President of FCA International. We are honored by the invitation to be here. She wishes she could be here and asked me to send her greetings and appreciation for all that you do. For those of you who might only be familiar with the WITS event, I'd like to take a minute to tell you about FCA. FCA was started in 1946 by General David Sarnoff, who went on to start the RCA Corporation. So he knew a little bit about communication. And he understood through World War II that the military and government needed to have relationships with industry and academia in times of peace in order to work effectively in times of war. So he brought together components to start FCA. The mission of FCA is to provide an ethical forum for military, government, industry, and academia to have the conversations necessary for national and global security. FCA is comprised of more than 1,600 corporate members that join to increase visibility and to interact with key government customers. And we have approximately 30,000 individual members for whom membership provides opportunities to lead, learn, and give back to their respective communities. We are an association for all levels of professionals, and I'd like to highlight our Emerging Leaders Program, which is focused on members under the age of 40. It's important to give those leaders, younger leaders, a voice in FCA as well. And Christian mentioned the event that's going on this evening down in the tank. Please, you don't have to be under 40 to go. Come and support the Emerging Leader Program. FCA, as Kristen mentioned, is located in 30 countries, and our members are organized by chapters. The Dayton-Wright chapter is one of FCA's most active chapters, bringing valuable events to the community here. Events like WITS take a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and we appreciate all of the hardworking volunteers who made this week possible. I believe some of the volunteers are kind of still out volunteering, but if I could ask the volunteers who helped put this event together, as well as the board of director members of the Dayton-Wright chapter, if you would please stand and be recognized. Thank you for all that you do. In the shadow of global threats, the military-government-industry relationship is more important than ever. We must all work together to find the trusted solutions to provide warfighters, first responders, and others the digital tools and strategies they know they can trust. We will spend the next couple of days focusing on the event's theme, Enterprise Digital Dominance. There's no better time to discuss this issue, as we must ensure that our warfighters have a secure and indeed dominant digital environment. The program provided to you this week, and it really is a great program, with a fabulous lineup of speakers, it's designed to open the lines of communication and facilitate networking, education, problem solving, as we find ourselves in an ever-digitized and competitive world. FCA's mantra is connecting people, ideas, and solutions globally. By communicating and sharing ideas and solutions like we're doing at this event, we can ensure that no organization is left behind on the digital battlefield and beyond. I just mentioned connecting people. Our most valuable connection is our people. And cybersecurity is a national security, and the workforce is the most important part of that. We know that there is a huge shortfall of trained professionals to fill the needs of cyber workforce. I would be remiss if I did not mention FCA's focus on STEM education. Our Education Foundation and our chapters, to include the Dayton-Wright chapter worldwide, have supported STEM education by awarding $2 million a year in scholarships to students majoring in STEM, supporting schools and teachers with grants in their STEM teaching tools. This event and the proceeds from this event support the STEM education right here in your community. This event would not be possible without all of our sponsors and our exhibitors over here, and I would ask that during the breaks you take time to go visit those sponsors and those visitors. And thank you all for being here and for helping to make this event possible as well. I would like to mention that FCA has a small business department and a small business committee dedicated to realizing success for our small business members. We know that small businesses often have the technical capabilities that government need to meet their mission, but they need assistance with the business and networking efforts. That's where the FCA Advantage comes in to make a difference as we help small businesses make valuable connections to assist with their business growth. As I close out comments from headquarters, I want to leave you with one final message about FCA. Kristen already mentioned it. If you're not a member, please join. Doctors have the American Medical Association, dentists have the ADA, lawyers have the bar. If you are an IT professional doing business with the federal government or an IT professional in the federal government, FCA is your professional association, and you have a home in FCA. So with that, I would now like to invite to the stage David Hart, Regional Vice President for FCA's Midwest region and Executive Vice President for JJR Solutions. And David is going to help me with 2 presentations. Before we do these presentations, I'd like to mention that David has been a regional vice president for many years, and he and I talked this fall, and he told me that he wants to transition out of the role of RVP to focus on his own nonprofit that he does. It really is amazing, and you need to talk to David during the breaks about the work that he's doing with the Wounded Warrior Weekends. But we're going to be acknowledging David in February in San Diego at West. But I just wanted to say, David, in front of this crowd, thank you for all that you've done for so many years in your service to FCA. Be in San Diego for like the big recognition. But David actually didn't want recognition today. He wanted to recognize 2 other people. And he said they're not going to be happy about this, but that they deserve to be recognized. So first, I know, Kristen, here you go. Kristen, would you please come to the stage? As Chris, I know, it's his fault. I wanted to do this, but no.
It's not on the agenda.
Kristen is the president, as you know, of the Dayton-Wright chapter. And Kristen, on behalf, let's have you 2 get up here so Mo can get your pictures. Kristen, on behalf of FCA International, it is my pleasure to present to you the Certificate of Appreciation for your continued leadership to the Dayton-Wright chapter. Your support and dedication to FCA and the Dayton-Wright chapter has had a huge impact on our community, and it has not gone unnoticed. Thank you for the work that you do to fulfill FCA's mission and to serve those who serve. So please join me in congratulating Kristen. Kristen, if you could please stay. Now, I think this volunteer might be out volunteering right now. Is Teresa Makaloloi in the house? Or is she waiting for our guest speaker? Or did she hear her name and run to the back? This is well rehearsed, can you tell? We're going to get Teresa in here. She's waiting for the general. Let me take yours so you can help. You're going to help present as a chapter president. You're going to help present Teresa's. There she comes. Here comes Teresa. Okay, let's give it up for Teresa Makaloloi.
What's happening?
So Teresa, you have led a team of volunteers with distinction to provide this week's event, and it's my privilege to bring you up on stage on behalf of FCA International to present you with a Certificate of Appreciation. The speakers and the networking opportunities bring values to our members and attendees, and the proceeds from this week's events will positively impact the students and the Dayton community. So Teresa, for your tireless efforts and the amazing results, it's my privilege and David's privilege to present you with a Certificate of Appreciation. One more round of applause, please. Thank you. All right. So, Kristen, I don't think you're supposed to go anywhere. I think I'm turning it back over to you, right? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great FCA week.
Oh, man. Thanks so much, Tina. And thank you for giving us such a great overview of FCA International. So events like this take a lot of planning, And this year, we're so very fortunate to have partnered with the DAF DTO. And if you saw our agenda and you were excited by any of the topics, speakers, or any of the content that you saw, it really is all thanks to our partnership with the Digital Transformation Office. And so I am just very, very proud to introduce you to our 2023 WITS co-chair, Mr. Kyle Hurst.
All right, good morning. First, I just want to thank everyone for coming to this event. I want to thank AFCEA, all of our sponsors here. I think the theme for this, and for those that don't know me, I'm Kyle Hurst. I lead up our digital transformation office here located in AFMC. Our theme this week, or for this event, I think is important. The words matter on our theme. So enterprise digital dominance is our theme this year. So when we talk about digital transformation or digital material management, as General Richardson puts it, I think for far too long the Air Force has been talking about it. We've been, philosophizing about it, and we've been maybe succeeding in silos, whether it's a program or a specific team. So under General Richardson's leadership, we've really been pursuing more of an enterprise approach. And I think his leadership's really spoken volumes on not just talking about it, but actually committing resources, committing his time and energy. We end up talking to him a lot more often than we maybe necessarily want. And for anyone that's been in the Air Force, knowing a 4-star level meeting takes a lot of planning, a lot of time. So we end up getting a lot of time with the boss, and it's very useful. And he's a huge supporter of this initiative. So he'll be here in a little bit, but I wanted to try to set the stage just a little bit. So when we talk digital material management within the command, we really break it down into 6 different initiatives, and we'll hear more of this from the boss. But it's structure and secure our data, provide access to tools, train our workforce, instill a digital-first culture, develop digital strategies, and then all underpinned by a modernized IT infrastructure. So those are our 6 kind of key pillars or levers of digital material management for the command. So over the next couple days, we're going to have a great lineup of speakers that I was frankly a little shocked that we got as many of the leaders that we're going to have. So we're going to have General Richardson here in a little bit. We're going to have Ms. Alexis Bonnell. For those that are tracking the research lab, we have a new digital capabilities directorate, and she's also the chief information officer for the lab. So that'll be a great topic. We have Major General Jenna Tempo from our Command, Control, Communication, Intelligence, and Networks Program Executive Officer talking. We have Ms. Eileen Vadrine, who is the Air Force's Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer. And we have panelists that are going to help us dig into each of those 6 initiatives that I referenced. So as a bit of a scene setter, at last year's AFA, I like telling this story. For those that know me, I tell a lot of stories. So General Brown gave a speech at last year's Air Force Association Airspace and Cyber Conference about really themed around we've done this before, we can do this again, was kind of his underlying theme. And so as we're talking about digital transformation and digital material management, we try to tie to that kind of accelerate, change, or lose vision that he pushes. We tie to we've done this before, we can do this again. So one of the other speakers that we're going to have here tomorrow that I can say this before the 4-star gets here that I'm most excited about, maybe not as excited, don't tell the boss that, but what I'm most excited about is to have Dr. Arthur Herman. If anyone's read the book Freedom's Forge, he's a New York Times bestselling author, and it really focuses on the industrial-based buildup around World War II, leading up to and through World War II. So not just how did the car manufacturers go from building Buicks to bombers, but how did the business relationship between the government and industry change? How did we leverage non-traditional partners better? What kind of processes did we have to break down in our typical acquisition construct? So we've done this kind of modernization before, this transformational alteration in our business process, our business relationships with industry and academia, and how can we do this again? This kind of was one of the boss's big pushes last year. So we're going to have Dr. Arthur Herman out here tomorrow to kind of dig in a little bit deeper into that. But I think that's a really useful, great kind of context to think about this for. He was also out here for the LCID conference, Life Cycle Industry Days, and he kind of pulled that thread even more on better leveraging our industry partners. And how we can kind of tie back to the industrial-based revolution that we went through in World War II. And one of the themes he pushed for was, I think the direct quote he had was, how can I create the imperative before we have to in a global power construct? So he's really thinking, our chief of staff, who's soon going to be hopefully the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, is really thinking about how can we create that imperative for that type of revolutionary, transformational relationship with our industry partners before we have to, because of the global construct that we're under. So one other thing I wanted to toss out there from kind of our leadership messaging that we're hearing, the second half is talking more and more about how we're organized for great power competition. So when we put that into context with what we're talking about, he's an acquisition guy, so I think that is also going to kind of tie into this kind of conversation. So we may have an industrial base that was forged with World War II kind of impetus and imperative, but we spent the next 40 plus years in more of a Soviet Union Cold War kind of dynamic. We spent about 10 years after that in kind of a dialing back our investments and really technical talent within the government. And then we've shifted, we spent 30 years under a very different global dynamic of who we were fighting, who our kind of threats were. So it's been a long time since we've had that kind of global power construct kind of thinking. So the way the Secretary is thinking about that, I think, is going to have an impact moving forward. So when I think of all those things from the Chief of Staff, from the Secretary of the Air Force, I think digital material management is kind of our way to respond to that, our Air Force Command way to kind of react to that. So with that kind of as a bit of a stage setter, I think we're going to have a lot more details coming out over the next couple days. But I did want to introduce my boss, Mr. Bob Fuchs. He is the Director for Engineering and Technical Management for Air Force Material Command, overseeing roughly 15,000 engineers, which I think is 80% of the engineers for the Air Force, the technical talent for the Air Force. So he's going to give a little bit more context and introduce the boss. So with that.
So good morning. I'm going to let the boss take a seat. Good morning, sir. How are you? Good to see you. Oh, thank you. One of them. Okay, so good morning, everyone. How are you out there today? Can I get a good morning? All right, so we're awake. So just before I get started, Kyle kind of introduced me. I'm Bob Fuchs. I'm the Director of Engineering for the command. I work directly for General Richardson as his Senior Functional Advisor for the command. I'm also the Chief Engineer for the command, which is something that I really cherish. It is the leadership of our 15,000 science, engineering, and technical workforce, so something that I take very seriously. I want to get started by thanking Kyle, who obviously I'm the middleman here. So General Richardson, obviously, he's our champion for DMM. I own the objective within our strategic plan under LOE 3, which is revolutionize our processes. DMM is 3.2. So I'm kind of the lead, but through Kyle's leadership, and now our Digital Acceleration Task Force led by Colonel Quigley, the combination of those two organizations make up DMM. And so I'm the middle guy in between. So what I always say is, like, I'm on the album cover, but I don't really sing any of the songs. So to get started, Teresa Makalolo-Oi. People say it fast. Thank you very much, Teresa. Kristen Facalata. All right, so Fuchs and Facalata go really well together. It sounds like a drink we should probably concoct one day. And then obviously to Tina, thank you for being here as well today. All right, so let me get started. I'm really excited about what's going to transpire here over the next 2 days. The information you will share and the discussions that you will have are critical to moving us forward to digital dominance. Before I introduce my boss, and oh, by the way, I'm really excited, and I didn't know this this factoid, that proceeds will go towards STEM. So I'm really excited about that. That really makes me happy. That's never a bad thing, because we need support in that area always. So before I introduce my boss, and I'm trying carefully not to steal any of his thunder, and he will bring the thunder, by the way, if you've never heard him speak. It's amazing. I want to take you through a thought experiment. So we at Air Force Materiel Command, we pride ourselves on powering the world's greatest Air Force. And how do we do that, you ask, right? By delivering the most complex and lethal integrated capability in the world. And why are we able to do this, you ask? Because of our incredible six-center ecosystem. In AFMC, we discover, develop, test, sustain in nearly every Air Force asset, including the nuclear ones, while also managing the basing and the infrastructure necessary throughout the world to make it all happen. But individually, each center is extremely effective, but has some limitations. But when integrated together, we thrive and are the most powerful. Today, our ecosystem is doing well. But honestly, in today's threat environment, well is not good enough anymore. Considering a great power competition, the result of a rapidly changing complex threat environment by a near-peer competitor, and we all know who that is, the likes we have never faced before. We thought it was the Soviet Union at one time, but this far surpasses that. We must accelerate change or face the true, unfathomable, unacceptable reality we might lose. We might lose. So let me share a real personal story with you, one that clearly reflects the importance of the event over the next 2 days. If you know anything about my background, I spent a lot of time in the F-35 program. 3 different times. I was a journeyman engineer, and I was going to give you dates, but then I thought, I'm not going to throw any dates out there, but it was a long time ago. But I started as a journeyman engineer, and then worked through that period. Then I came back to the program kind of as a middle lead engineer type, and then I eventually came back as the director. So I got about 18 and a half years over the last 23 years in one program, doing many different jobs, but a long time in that capacity. But one of the things I recognized after I took over the directorship is that nothing had changed. I came back to the job 3 times, and the 3 times I came back to the job, I didn't have to learn how to do anything different. They were still doing business the same way that I started back in 1999. There you go, I gave the date. Eye-opening, right? Not a method, not a process, and very few tools had changed in those 20 years. But obviously, it's not good enough. It's not good enough to keep up with the pace in which our peer adversary is producing capability these days. And so that's not the only example. That's just one program. That example is across the board in the way we're doing business today. And that's really why we're getting after this. That's really the importance of why we're getting after this and why we're here today. So what do we do to accelerate change? We must reform the way we deliver integrated capability so that we can do it at the speed of relevance and stay ahead of our competition, right? What is the speed of relevance? For us in engineering, sometimes it's real time. Sometimes it's being able to exchange information at the same time, to look at it at the same time. That's real time. That's no delay. We must create, embrace, and implement new, better, faster, more effective ways to deliver war-winning capabilities of the future while enhancing our ability to modify and sustain capabilities we have today. So we have to fight with what we have tonight, and we have to deliver on the things we need for the future. And we have to do it fast, because our peer competitor is doing it very fast. So to achieve this, in addition, we must do it more in an integrated way. What will enable us to accelerate change we desire? You're correct, it's digital material management. If that's what you were thinking, you're right. DMM manifests itself in our strategic plan in the revolutionizing our processes and has 6 initiatives, which Kyle already discussed. And we will discuss those over the next couple days here. All right, predominantly it's driven by science and engineering, but it goes well beyond that, extending into all functional elements. So it's kind of driven out of our engineering organization, but it goes beyond engineering, and I want to make sure that we understand that point. It's enterprise-focused, model-based, and architected for speed and agility. Foundationally, it centers around our data and infrastructure, which is required to unleash its power, providing the ability to make the most informed, effective decisions quickly and share it with whomever needs it real time at all security levels. In my engineering organization, our mantra is wisdom from the past, leadership for the future. I think that applies unequivocally here. Kyle mentioned Freedom's Forge and our industrial buildup leading up to World War II. It was a whole of government effort, but there was undeniable leadership and partnership with industry, academia, and the local and regional community. Auto manufacturers shifted from building cars to bombers. Companies that built roads and dams shifted to shipyards. Tractor manufacturers shifted to amphibious ships. Technology and research in World War II included radar, synthetic rubber, and even computational methods for code breaking developed right here in Dayton, Ohio, to beat the German Enigma machine. Our digital transformation goals of today are reminiscent of the needed partnerships from the past. We won't succeed without our colleges and universities producing the workforce pipelines we need and providing some continuing education offerings to help our existing workforce adapt. We won't succeed without the innovative small businesses represented here delivering novel solutions and capabilities to today's challenges. We won't succeed without the support of the partnerships from the community-driven organizations like AFCEA and many of the sponsors that we have here today. We truly desire and value partnerships. We hope the next 2 days gives you a much deeper insight to what we're pursuing with digital material management, what our needs are, and how we can work better together moving forward. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for. I have the honor to introduce someone that I worked for 2 times before this job. He is the driving force behind and understands the significance that DMM will have on producing the accelerated change we need to deliver integrated capability at the speed of relevance. He is personally committed to seeing this through, as evident by his authorization of human capital and financial resources contributing to its success. So enough of me, it's time to hear from him. So ladies and gentlemen, the Commander of Air Force Materiel Command, General Duke Richardson.
All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right, just so I know who's in the audience, if you're not from Dayton, raise your hand. Wow, okay. So most of you are not. That's great. So I'm really happy to be here, get a chance to do this. I want to thank the Dayton-Wright chapter of AFCEA. Also, is Kyle here? Where's Kyle? There you are. The Digital Transformation, I can only sort of see, even with these glasses on. The Digital Transformation Office, and then, do we have academia here? Okay, and how about industry? A lot of industry, that's good. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Hopefully what I'm about to say, a lot of the ideas that I'm about to talk about aren't new to you because we've been talking about this for a while. What we're trying to do now is really put a lot of this into action. The theme here, transformation to a digital environment, I struggle a little bit with that because haven't computers been around for a while? Now, believe it or not, I actually did use a computer when I went to college. I know, Bob, you're finding that hard to believe, but what's different today, I would say there's 3 things that are different. The first thing that's different is just the compute power in today's computer is so greatly different than when I was in college. Another thing that's different are all the digital tools that we have access to, and I'll kind of talk about tools in a minute. And then the third thing is the cloud, the ability to collaborate, not be in the same room or even the same state has really changed, everything. And so the cloud, I'm a huge fan of the cloud. I use it for my own stuff at home, and I use it for work. And it's awesome. And so those 3 things, I think, really have afforded us an opportunity to do things differently. And so if anybody wonders, hey, what's different about that? Those are the 3 things that I point to. Bob Fuchs talked about did you say China? You didn't say China. Yeah, he left that out. So the People's Republic of China, that's really the challenge that we're trying to address right now. And the reason is because they're able to, they appear to be able to move faster, a lot faster than we're able to move. So we take about 16 years on average to, start in field a system, where they're at about they're just at about 7 years, and so that's quite a difference. That's more than 2 to 1. And so this is an unclassified venue, but if I was to take you into some classified spaces at Wright-Patterson, I could show you, whether it's aircraft or weapons, different abilities to go really fast, and also just the number of systems that they're developing. It's not just how fast they're doing individual systems, it's just the quantity of different systems that they're doing. I think we're good. We're Americans. We're gonna rally to the call here, but we do have a lot of work to do. And so, I think part of the problem, is if you look at the way that we've been doing this business, we always say, hey, we're risk averse, and what does that mean? I do think that's true to an extent. I think I'll use the word performance risk averse. We're very concerned that the performance of the systems that we develop, produce, deliver, sustain, aren't going to meet that exquisite set of requirements that we have for them. And I think we need to take a little bit more risk in that area. So what we're trying to do now is kind of, the polarity of, performance risk of the system that we delivered versus mission risk of not even having the system delivered at all. And I think that's some of the starts of the conversation that we're having pretty heavily right now inside the Department of the Air Force. And so, if you look at Ukraine, is just fascinating to me how quickly, we've been able to support that effort through various means. A lot of things I can't really talk about, but as I look at and I study and I ask a lot of questions about what we're able to do there, and like, how did we do that so quickly? How did that happen? In most cases, it traces to we took some performance risk. We decided not to take mission risk, and instead we took performance risk. And when we take performance risk, there's maybe some limitations, some caveats we have to put on those systems because maybe we didn't test them across their full envelope or spectrum of capabilities. But we did that, and then I think that's a model for us. And so, trying to get perfection is really not going to be the answer that we're looking for. And so besides speed, I want to make sure that you all understand it's not just speed that's important. Agility is important. And what I mean by agility is the ability to pivot quickly, to change to something or to add something, to be able to handle, frankly, change. And so I think that's really important. Bob talked about digital material management, which I'm going to go through in a little bit. I think that is what allows us to be agile. It's not just speed, okay? It's agility as well. And so agility is a very fancy word. It has lots of aspects to it. In our strategic plan, it kind of gets after this idea of fitness attributes, balanced. It does include speed, coordination, all those things that your body does every day, whether you know it or not, all kind of working in coordination. That's what digital material management is going to allow us to do. I recognize we can't do this without you. I 100% recognize that. I also recognize I'm a novice in this space. I like to joke around with people that I would really love to go back about 20 years, maybe further, maybe 30, I don't know. I've been in 40 years if you're wondering. Yes, I'm an old guy. And be on the cutting edge of all this new stuff that we're doing now. A lot of the younger folks, they don't have any issues with, some of these new techniques. So if you go to the Next Generation Air Dominance Program office, they're using all of this. There's folks in there that this is all they know. This is how it's done. And so they're not paper-based. Their processes aren't paper-based. It's not the paper, it's the processes, right? Just to make sure we're clear. We're not trying to digitize paper. That's not the point. We're trying to change the processes because we have the cloud, compute power, and digital tools. Okay, so if we end up just digitizing the old way of doing business, then we've lost. So if you're an industry and you deliver your monthly integrated master schedule deliverable to the government, and you do that using a digital means, or you give the government access to a link, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, that's still a very static monthly deliverable. The government gets it, reviews it, approves it, kicks it back, and so forth and so on. That's not what we're talking about it. So we can't do this without you. That'll become clear in a minute. Couple questions. Is it overhyped? Do you think it's overhyped? I think it can be overhyped. I think the promise is not overhyped, but sometimes I think in some of the systems that we're doing now, we're overhyping how far it's gone. But I think the promise and the vision is definitely not overhyped. I think there's a lot there. Is there anything new here? You know, that's a really great question. And so I've had this conversation with Secretary Kendall. You know, is there anything new here? I would say no, probably not. You know, if you think about the aspect of systems engineering, we're still going to do systems engineering. We're still going to do that. So we're going to go down the V where we take endurance, lethality, survivability, right? So just take 3 attributes that might be important to a bomber: endurance, lethality, survivability, and start decomposing those requirements all the way down to the card level. That's what systems engineering is, right? Everything gets a budget, we allocate down, size, weight, and power, and then we start testing it on the way back up the right side of the V curve, right? At the card level, we test the box, we test the subsystem, we test the system, we test the aircraft, right? We finish all that, we hand it to OT, and they kind of do the same thing, except in a more operationally relevant environment. That doesn't change. Okay, and so I think, Secretary and I had this conversation. Sir, you're right, there's nothing new here. It's how we're doing it that's new, though. It's how we're doing it. Systems engineering is always going to be paramount, but how we actually implement it is what's different. And Bob mentioned this a little bit. I have to remind him a lot. It's more than about digital engineering, okay? I am an engineer. You can check my bio, it's true. I actually have a bachelor's and a master's in electrical engineering. So I love engineers. But it's way larger than that. And so it crosses all of the functional domains, and it crosses all the phases of what I would consider lifecycle management. I think I've mentioned this before. The Air Force Material Command, in my opinion, is sort of misnamed. It's really the Air Force Lifecycle Management Command, because that's what we do. We invent and we sustain and we retire and we do installations in addition to that. That's the entire life cycle. We do have a center that's called the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, but they didn't ask me when they set all this up and gave it the names. Point being that DMM covers the entire life cycle, from invention all the way to disposal. And I'll give an example of that in a minute. If you look at our strategic plan, and I'm hoping that everybody in this room has read it, it's pretty short. There's 4 lines of effort in it, but what kind of crosses over all 4 lines of effort are 2 ideas. The first idea is this idea of an enterprise solutions, trying to use enterprise solutions. And you'll hear that at the DAF level too, right? The chief and the secretary are very much about doing enterprise solutions that apply to the entire department. Inside my ecosystem called Air Force Material Command, I want to follow that same philosophy and have enterprise solutions for our command that apply to our command. And for me, the crown jewel enterprise solution is digital material management. It's the crown jewel. And that's why I'm placing a lot of time on it. Mr. Fuchs mentioned that I'm placing a lot of resources against it. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's true. And also funding. I don't, unfortunately, have a lot of funding, and so I have to come up with creative ways of funding this stuff until it hits a tipping point. I don't think it's there, although I think it's getting closer. And so, Honorable Hunter, so y'all know, right? Honorable Hunter is the service acquisition executive. Honorable Hunter is the one that selects the acquisition strategies for our programs. That's not me. I'm the process person. So make sure that we have the tools and the training, the workforce, the processes to actually execute the strategies that he's approving He and I are extremely close partners. In fact, we ran the Air Force half marathon side by side, start to finish, on Saturday, and talked the entire way. So that gives you a sense for how close that partnership is. We're extremely close, and he's got his role, I've got my role. They're linked. You can't do one without the other. And he is completely on board with this whole idea, as am I. So let me give a couple of quick examples. One example that's used a lot is Sentinel, and I think it's pretty widely known that the Sentinel program did a lot of performance modeling, and just thousands and thousands of design iterations to try to find that spot on the curve where something was affordable but also very effective. And so that was used pretty successfully on the Sentinel. That's a new program. I mentioned it's being used pretty heavily in NGAD. I can't go through a lot of the details on NGAD, but trust me, NGAD is the gold standard. It's the gold standard. That's why I feel so passionate about it. I've spent a lot of hours working with that team and watching that team and learning from that team. And so it's really tremendous. Another example I give you is the A10. I think the A10 is fascinating. So the OEM went out of business, right? So here we have the A10. For some reason, out of necessity, we digitized that airplane. I think it's fascinating that when you need something because it's an imperative, you find a way. So the A10 had to do this, and they found a way. Bob, I do need to find out how much that cost them to do that, because then I'll go to another program that does have an OEM, and oh no, that's too hard, we can't do that, it'll take too long, it's too expensive. Like, the A10 found a way. They didn't have a choice. So, necessity is the mother of invention, and A10 found a way. Another one is the C-130 program. They are organically developing an electrical loads analysis model. And so they're doing that for a subsystem. I mentioned NGAD. If you go down to Eglin, talk to General Bartolome, all of his new weapons programs are using these methods. It's just the way that they're doing it. So if you work weapons programs, you better figure this out, because they're not doing it any other way than this. Okay, so, and I'm sorry I missed Kyle's, did you talk about the 6 levers? Okay, can I talk about it? Yeah, of course. What else are you going to say, right? By the way, how about this venue? Like, very distracting, It's just so beautiful in here. 6 levers. Let me just talk through the 6 levers. If you've seen the white paper, have you seen the white paper? No. Kyle, what's going on? Okay, let's make sure they see the white paper. Another short read. When we built these documents, we insisted on brevity, right? And so that's a short read. It talks about 6 levers, and really you can almost think of them as sub-initiatives under this DMM initiative. The first lever is instilling a digital-first culture, and trying to get to a place where the workforce thinks digital, using digital first. And really that gets into a lot of different things like collaboration. I think it affords us an opportunity to collaborate with industry like we've never. I know this is possible. If you think it's just pie in the sky, you would be wrong, because we have programs that are doing it. So it's amazing the amount of collaboration that's going on between industry and the government engineering team and the product support team and the financial management team through these. And I mentioned CDRLs as, you all know what a CDRL is. What is it? It's contract data requirements list or something. Basically what you have to, all the data that you have to deliver. You've seen these, right? And you know that each CDRL is governed by a DID, a data item descriptor. You've seen these. And it describes exactly how you have to deliver that thing. And so we have all these DIDs that they're very, and all the services use them. But most of them are not built for a digital environment. And so, frankly, I don't know what the future looks like here. I don't know what it looks like. I have an idea, and I think I've alluded to it. I don't think it's a government employee waiting around for the monthly, you name the deliverable to come in to then inspect it and tell you it sucks. go fix it. I think it changes quite a lot. I think it's almost real time. And so we really have to think through that. I want to experiment and explore and prototype. I want to take some risk in this area. What does that look like? So seed rolls, we'll probably still call the seed rolls actually just a list of all the things that you have to turn in, but we'll probably still have DIDs, but they're gonna, I think, look very different. So digital first culture. But we're gonna have people that are gonna be trapped in the old ways. They're not gonna wanna embrace this. They're not gonna wanna do this because it's not what they know. It requires them to learn new things. And maybe they'll feel like they're losing control. The second lever is developing digital strategies, and that's where the work with Honorable Hunter is critically important. Not just Honorable Hunter, but PEOs. For lower level programs, PEOs are the ones that approve the ACT strategies, right? And so making sure that our program executive officers and our TEO, is the lab here today? Do we have any lab folks here? Oh, okay, very good. So the technology executive officer, unless they embrace this, we're gonna lose here. And so the strategies for the programs have to be based on digital. And so I'm not the SAE. I think I made that point. But if I was, or if I was still a PEO and you came to me and you didn't have a digitally based strategy, I would immediately ask you why not, and you'd have some splaining to do. So our strategies have to come out of the gate that way. There's some programs that we're not going to do that with, and the example I like is, we're going to put a rudder position indicator on the KC-135. Probably can just do that quickly and easily and not worry about it. But there's a lot of other things that we're going to do this with. The B-52 SERP, commercial engine replacement program, we're definitely doing that digitally. F-15EX, a good bit of that airplane is digital. Not all of it, but the parts that we messed pretty heavily with. So if you're out there and you're working on a legacy program, I don't want to hear it. Think about how you can do that differently, especially if it's a fairly extensive mod. So the second lever is develop digital strategies. Third lever is structure and secure our data. This is the big one. Making sure that our data is accessible, hasn't been tampered with, current, making sure the data rights are correct, both for industry and the government. These tools allow us to do that. I think getting our data structured and secured and properly tagged is very important. Classification levels, things like that. So structure and secure our data, that is one that is just very near-term things that we have to work on. The fourth lever is this idea of tools, access to tools. I've done a lot of work in this space. I've talked a lot with industry. Hey, should the government mandate tools? I'm sure you're going to be talking about this during the next 2 days. What does that look like? We have actually mandated a tool called PLM Team Center, or Air Force PLM for short. That tool has been mandated. I think it's a central tool. Like I said, I am an engineer, so you get in this great debate is what's the most important tool? I'm an engineer. I will tell you, I think the PLM tool is the most important tool. It is the fundamental tool for me. It's where it all starts. It's where we house our data. It's where we do product support from. It's really, really, really critical. So we've taken the step. Bob, don't get your feelings hurt. I know PLM probably would be viewed as a logistician's tool, but for me, it's like the holy grail tool. And so the other tools, we'll work through whether we mandate those. Right now the current thinking is that we won't. But it's going to require our workforce to be adept at multiple tools, right? Dating back to the great, word processing wars. Is it Word or is it Word Perfect or is it Word Star? Do y'all remember that? Actually, I've used all three. Anybody use all three of those? Yes, love it. But the government eventually said, hey, you know what? That's all great, but we're going to use Word. And so I think if we do end up mandating tools, we have to be super careful that we choose wisely. Actually, that's pretty much true of anything. Anytime we mandate some policy, the government, we don't want to be heavy-handed because we might be wrong. And so so the tool is access. So tools tools is one thing, but access to the tools is another. And I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to make sure that the government workforce has access to these tools. The fifth lever is training a digital workforce. So it's great if we have all this talk and all these tools, but if the workforce doesn't understand how to use them or how to build digital strategies, we're going to lose. So there's a lot of work going on there to train our workforce. I'm assuming that in industry you're struggling with the same thing. I'm pretty sure if I went into industry, certain pockets of industry, that your workforce is struggling with the same thing and probably needs the same training. Okay, the last one. Modernizing our IT infrastructure. OMG. Learning a lot about this lately. Major Karen I think she's been counting up the amount of hours I've spent in the IT area, and we're over, we won't say, it's a lot. And what I'm learning is that we're hard broke here. We're hard broke here, both in the unclassed area and also the classified area. We're also hard broke in terms of being able to transcend from unclass to class or from class back down to unclass. And that also gets into the data, how we tag data. Conceptually in my mind, I think this is 100% possible. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's so hard. If we can tag our data properly, there should be no reason that we can't make sure that the right information stays where it needs to be, it doesn't go where it shouldn't go, and that people that shouldn't see certain data shouldn't see it. Come on, guys, this is 100% possible. And so if you look at the DMM, y'all seen the circle, the round L for the DMM, the 6 levers are in that, but the outside lever is this infrastructure one. It's really the gear. And I didn't build that. I don't know who did, but whoever it was very prescient, because it's turning out that outside gear, wow, that's the one that needs a lot of work. Okay, so that's the 6 levers of DMM. We think we have this right. It's getting a lot of attention at the Air Force level, and also, the Army's pretty focused on it. We haven't briefed Dr. LaPlante yet, have we? Yeah, I think eventually we'll get up there, Ms. Hsu level. I think the Air Force is doing pretty well in this area. Lots of practical implications for DMM. I mentioned having the ability to have our teams be geographically separated. That's a large one. And it's really large because it also, I think, allows our vendors, our primes, to be geographically separated from their suppliers. And so there's this big push to try to connect the government with, the primes. But I would venture to say that's just the start of it. It really needs to go much lower than that. That'll be more challenging because some of the sub-tier suppliers, are not going to be as far along, on this journey. I mentioned systems engineering. I mentioned the systems engineering V, how it applies there pretty heavily. Lots of test applications. I'll go through that in a little bit. Production. Wow. So this idea of full-size determinate assembly. Y'all know what that means? So the ability to take modern machining techniques and tools and make parts that are essentially identical to each other. And so inside of a lot, even across lots, the parts are the same, and I can interchange a part from one airplane from one lot to another airplane on another lot. And I'm not using shims, and I don't have to be like an expert craftsman, artisan to get it done. That's not heretofore, that's not been happening, right? So if you went to Ogden Air Logistics Complex out in Ogden, Utah, if you go out there, we're overhauling F-16s right now. We're doing service life extension programs to F-16s. And we're struggling. We literally have variation within lots of F-16s to where we're doing all kinds of cross-referencing to the tech data just to drill a hole. It takes 45 minutes to drill a hole. Then we got to go do the next setup to drill the next hole because the next tail's not going to be the same. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I went out there. We can fix this. And these techniques, in addition to allowing us to produce faster, once we get into the product support aspect, that's where I'm super excited. You know, because we seem to have a tendency to hold on to our stuff a long, long time. And so that product support aspect is just so critical, so that we're not doing that. You know, little known fact, you know, Mr. Fuchs and I worked on the Air Force One program together a few years ago. We bought two used 747-800s. It's the 747 with the double hump. You've seen these? They're really large. They're pretty much used for freight, for hauling freight. So we bought two of those used, and they were a great deal. I mean, okay deal. I mean, so we bought two of those used to try to bring the cost of that program down. One of them's 9 inches longer than the other. Now I know it's a long airplane, so proportionally, right, you know, but it makes the point, doesn't it? Why is that? And so, so if you scale it to a fighter, I mean, it makes my point about the F-16. And so I'm really excited about the product support aspects of it. I used to be an aircraft maintainer when I was enlisted. And so, and I was the A4 for this command. And so the product support aspects are pretty exciting to me. The idea to produce things without a lot of tooling required, having parts show up pre-drilled, having parts show up pre-stuffed. So, you know, the wiring's already installed, it's just basically, I'm not gonna say Legos, but, you know, how about a Rector set? I mean, obviously there's gonna be some attachments that have to be done, but that's pretty much it. I watched General Brown install a part on a T-7. I did. It's pretty cool, because the T-7 is done using these techniques. You know, I mentioned it's not just digital engineering. It really spans all of the disciplines. Program management. So I was an engineer. I eventually converted to a program manager, as many uniformed folks do. You know, you just kind of get assimilated eventually. But you know, for me, the idea of baseline management is pretty central. So think about cost baselines, schedule baselines, performance baselines, risk baselines, any baseline that you can think of. That's really what program managers are really good at, and these tools allow us to do that. Contracting, I think there's a lot. Any contracting officers in here? There we go. Wow, our one token contracting officer. And so, you know, I've talked to contracting officers, I won't name names, but they're like, hey, let us know when you're all done with that, and we'll step in. Like, no. You are in the beginning, because we have to change how we contract for things. Our clauses, everything changes. I mentioned the DIDs already. So if you do this contracting work and you don't think you're part of this, you're wrong. You are definitely part of it. Engineering, obviously, there's a connection there. Logistics, I mentioned PLM pretty heavily. I mentioned being able to interchange parts. I'm really excited about the ability to, if we can properly structure and secure our data and get the data rights correct, you know, the ability to actually do supply support. I'm going to lose my mind if I hear one more time that we can't get a vendor to bid on some piece of supply for the T-38. Oh, well, it can't. Like, what do you mean we can't? We made the T-38 once. I think we can make the parts for it again. And so we have got, so that for me, the logistics aspects, I'm sorry, Bob, but I'm probably most excited about that. Okay, I know that hurts your feelings, but the product support aspects, I think, are the most exciting aspect of it. And also financial management, same thing, I mentioned the financial baselines, the ability to do what-if drills, bombs, all that stuff. Test and evaluation. So you've heard of joint simulation environment? So the joint simulation environment, if you haven't heard of it, what it basically is it's a, well, the name is pretty descriptive, but the F-35 still hasn't gotten to full rate production. Did you know that? Like, how's that possible? We own like 300 or 400 of them. I think 700 or 800 have probably been made. It still hasn't made it into full rate production. What's stopping it? Well, it hasn't finished IOT&E. What's stopping that? Well, it turns out some of the threat environments we can't replicate in open air. So we actually need a simulator to replicate the threat environment so that we can finish IOT&E so that we can have full rate production. That's pretty fascinating to me. Again, necessity, right? We can't do it any other way, so we have to use digital. Why is it that we only turn to it and that's our only choice? It has great advantage when it's our only choice. It also has great advantage when it's not our only choice. And so the joint simulation environment, General Brown signed out a memo, I think it was in March, talking about new weapon systems have to be compliant with the JSE. Right now, F-35 is the only thing that's part of it. And everything's in it, so all the threats are in it, the weather's in it, so you can run very high-end scenarios in it. I think long-term, and this is probably a long journey, we'll get all of our weapon systems in it. People are all getting excited about it. We have to kind of tell them to slow their roll a little bit because we can't shove everything in it all at once. And so the ability to do tests, virtually. This is another area that gets discussed. Is this overhyped? Well, it's only overhyped if you overuse it. We will always do open air testing. We have to validate our models, right? We're always going to do open air testing, but there's a lot of testing we don't have to do in open air. There's testing we can do on the ground, there's testing we can do in the sill, there's testing that we can do using these authoritative models once we have actually validated them. So I think there's quite a lot of promise in test as well, a huge amount of promise in test. And so that kind of walks you through, I tried to walk through this through two aspects. The first aspect is a life cycle aspect, and the second aspect is through a functional aspect. If you read that white paper, I just basically just told you what's in the white paper. And so everybody has a role here. A couple quick things we've got Cloud One, is hosting our software tools environment. I think we're up to about 500 users or so. So that when I say tipping point, that's some of the metrics I'm watching is how quickly people are wanting into that environment so they can get access to the tools. And so 500 is not enough. Just not. But it's definitely ramping up quickly. We've got, is anybody from AFIT here? Oh boy, they're here, okay. So AFIT, we're working closely with the Air Force Institute of Technology. We've established a Digital Innovation and Integration Center for Excellence, or DICE, to help train our workforce. So they're building courses, that's what they do for a living, so they're building courses for us to make sure that our workforce is all trained up. I'm hoping they're back there taking a lot of notes, I noticed, which is really great. I'm hoping they're building courses for not just engineering, but all functionals. Yes? I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay. So that's really great. I mentioned our PLM, the product lifecycle management tool. We're ingesting new users into that about as fast as we can. I still haven't gotten my account. Where's Cody? What? Any day now. And they think I'm kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I want to actually get in there and mess around with it. And then I'm going to mess around with other tools. Because I don't have a life on the weekends. This is interesting to me, and I'm a very curious person. So ingesting a lot of folks into the PLM tool. The research lab has stood up the Digital Capabilities Directorate. I think you're going to hear from Miss Alexis Bonnell. That's you. I've never met you. Okay. Hello, virtually. Did I say your last name correctly? Close enough? And then, have you heard of the Digital Acceleration Task Force? Yes? Oh, Colonel Quigley. So the Digital Transformation Office, so if you hear the term DTO, that's been around for a while. And that's a partnership that we have with the Service Acquisition Executive, office symbol SAF-AQ. SAF-AQR is an office inside the SAF-AQ. That's existed for a while. That will exist in perpetuity. But to try to really put a lot of emphasis on this, we stood up a Digital Acceleration Task Force. And so General Brown was very kind he allowed me to take Brigadier General Select, Eric Quigley, and put him on the DATF. So he's leading the DATF. He's operationally controlled by Mr. Fuchs. I praise him, so I got my hand around his neck. And so he's got both of us pulling pretty hard on him to try to really, really hit that tipping point. So if we can hit that tipping point before we move you on to something else, I'm going to be really stoked. The DATF, it might be a 1 or 2 year thing, but the DTO will exist, okay? So when you think of the DATF, just think about taking the work of the DTO and throwing it on steroids. And so we're doing a bunch of stuff. We're starting a couple industry consortia. Are we talking about that today or during the 2 days? Are you talking at this thing? Kyle is. Okay, so are you going to talk about the consortia? Okay, well, I'll talk a little bit about them. So we're gonna establish a couple 2 industry consortia. I'll talk about that more in a minute. We're delivering DMM playbooks so that new programs and new folks can figure out how to do that, digital best practices, if you will. We're working very closely with SAF AQR, Ms. Kristen Baldwin, on that. I mentioned this idea of an integrated digital environment. Remember I said that digital infrastructure is like the wheel on the outside, and I'm finding that is where we're kind of really hurting. And so we're working right now to figure out how to set up integrated digital environments, and so that each program doesn't have to figure it out on their own. So I've been personally investing a lot of time working with NGAD and Sentinel and B21 and Luke Cropsey for the PEO C3BM, trying to figure out how to do this one way, one time, so that multiple people can use it. We don't want those PEOs to be IDE PEOs, really. They've been asked to do a job, and so I consider that part of my duties in the organized training and equip bucket. Working to secure data and access and standards with industry. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The DATF has been, now this won't surprise you, at least I hope not. The Digital Acceleration Task Force isn't just engineers. Okay, and so I have taken people out of Hyde, taken risk in other areas, because I'm not getting more people to do any of this work. So we're taking risk in certain areas and assigning them to the DATF from all functionals. So if you're out there in industry, think about it. You should be doing the same thing. All centers. AFMC consists of 6 centers. All centers are assigning people to the DATF. It's a task force. It's supposed to mean something. And it has a very provocative title, Digital Acceleration Task Force. And so we're trying to take that seriously and put some teeth behind it. The work of our centers needs to be integrated. Each center cannot do their job without the help of the other centers. And so this DATF is going to help us do that under Colonel Quigley's leadership. Okay, so I mentioned the industry consortiums. There's 2 of them. The first one is called the Industry Association Consortium, or IAC, and NDIA is helping us with that. The Army's very interested. I'll be interested to see whether other services jump on board as time passes. FFRDCs are involved, UARCs are involved. And that's pretty open to pretty much anybody that wants to be, that's kind of a coalition of the willing. And so we're going to set up a bunch of working groups underneath that consortium to try to get after, some of these things that I've been mentioning, the 6 levers. So if you read that white paper, you'll see the 6 levers in there. The second consortium is what we're calling a Digital Acceleration Consortium. That will be more limited in terms of who participates. We're doing market research right now to try to figure out who should participate. And we're going to be super careful in doing that. So we'll try to get the folks who are like kind of leading the way here. And so that DAC, the Digital Acceleration Consortium, will be smaller, will be focused. They're going to get after the 2 things they're going to get after right away. This hopefully will not surprise you. The first one is the infrastructure. How do we set that up? Are there multiple models? I think there probably is multiple models, Kyle. Is it the government's infrastructure? Is it industry's infrastructure? How does that look? I have personally lots of questions in this area, a ton of questions. You know, first rule of databases is there's only one database, right? As soon as you have two, you open up an opportunity for somebody to be outdated. And so that's always in my mind. I think that the proper term is authoritative source of truth, right? So Kyle would school me later. So that's really what that's about. And so I have lots of questions. But I also recognize that I'm not the expert. And so we're going to get after that right away. Secure and access our data, that's another one. So really, what are the data standards? So those are probably two of the 6 levers that that second consortium is going to get after, right away. Okay, so I think I'm about out of time. Was I supposed to ask for okay. So they'll ask you the questions at the break. I'm hoping this was useful. I see a lot of people taking notes. I'm hoping this was useful to you. I'm hoping you're also learning that I'm dead serious about this. You're probably shocked that a 4-star would spend so much time on this. That tells you how much I believe in it. I do think it will make a difference. I think this is our opportunity. To be the greatest generation that this nation has ever seen. But we have to grab onto this. If you're out there and you're in industry, I know, that's tricky because you're trying to fight for a competitive advantage, but you're also being part of this larger community. I think you can actually play both roles. And if we get this set up correctly, we're not taking away anybody's advantage. But we need to work together to get this set up correctly so that everyone can benefit and have the opportunity to compete in this space. And so that's what I'm hoping. I think, if you look at my bio, you'll see that I've been in over 40 years. And the uniform folks back there are probably like, what a dope. Does he not realize that it maxes out at 40 years, the retirement system? Yes, he does realize that. It's not all about money, folks. When I do take the uniform off, I want to make sure that I've left nothing on the field, that I've given everything that I can, every measure that I can to making our nation stronger. And I'd ask that you be part of this team. It's an incredible opportunity. I can't think of anything more important to do with your life than what you're doing here in this room, helping us get this set up correctly. And I wish I could stay for the 2 days. But I have to go back, and Kyle and Bob and Eric probably don't want me around. Do you? You're good? No. They're like, how do I answer that question? All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, General Richardson. And what I handed him there is a speaker gift that we're going to be giving to all of our speakers. When you think of innovation in Dayton, who do we think of? Wright brothers, of course. So for all of our speakers today, we're going to be giving them a story of the Wright brothers, written by David McCullough. And if you haven't had a chance to read that book yet, I highly recommend it. I know I personally read it, and after I read it, I cannot get on a flight without thinking about that book and just marveling at modern day air power and airplanes that we have. When you read that story, you'll know why, or you read that book. So again, honoring the legacy that we have here in Dayton, but with an eye towards the future, of course. So with that, we actually have time for a quick bio break. We'll reconvene at 10:45. Reminder that the restrooms are in the back. So if you want to grab a quick cup of coffee, hit the restrooms in the back. We will start right back up at 10:45. Thank you.